In a room filled with the brightest minds and the most influential figures, no one paid her any attention. She was quiet. She was unseen, but in the blink of an eye, everything changed. When the invisible woman rose to power, no one saw it coming until it was too late. The office hummed with the typical buzz of the morning rush, but no one noticed Olivia as she slipped in through the side door, rolling her cleaning cart with practiced calm. She wore her dark green uniform like armor, simple, unremarkable. Her face was a mask of serenity, hiding the emotions she kept buried deep inside. To the executives, she was invisible, just the janitor, the one who wiped down their desks, emptied the trash, and occasionally shared a polite smile with the few who bothered to acknowledge her existence. It had always been this way at Sinclair & Wells, a bustling corporate hub in downtown Dallas, Texas. Now in her early 50s, Olivia had long since grown accustomed to the routine and the dismissive looks, the jokes whispered behind her back when they thought she couldn't hear. Is she even doing anything right now? Someone had muttered just last week as she patiently waited for a meeting to wrap up so she could clean the boardroom. But Olivia never reacted. She'd learned long ago not to give them the satisfaction of seeing any emotion. Her hands moved with steady precision as she went about her work. What no one in that office knew, what they could never know, was that Olivia held a secret. A secret so immense, it had the power to shift the very foundation of the building beneath them. But Olivia was not impulsive. She believed in patience, in watching, in waiting. Today, though, as she moved through the brightly lit hallways, her serene expression concealed the storm brewing inside. She was nearing her breaking point. The morning unfolded as it always did. Olivia polished the glass doors to perfection, vacuumed the plush carpet in the lobby, and tidied the cluttered desks of those who never bothered to clean up their messes. She worked with diligence, even as snippets of conversation about business deals and promotions drifted through the air. One conversation, however, caught her attention. She wasn't trying to eavesdrop, it wasn't in her nature, but the voices were too loud and too impossible to ignore. "The shareholders' meeting is next week," one executive said, his voice dripping with smugness. "We've got nothing to worry about. The board loves the numbers, and the CEO is untouchable. No one in their right mind would challenge him." Olivia stopped for just a moment, her grip tightening on the handle of her cart. She knew what they didn't. They had no idea how wrong they were, but Olivia quickly pushed the thought aside. There was still work to be done, and she had to be ready for what was coming. Sinclair & Wells prided itself on its sleek, modern image. The headquarters, a towering glass structure in the heart of Dallas, was a frequent feature in business magazines, hailed as a symbol of corporate success. But inside, the reality was far less glamorous. The culture was ruthless. The higher you climbed, the less you seemed to care about anyone below you. Olivia had spent nearly a decade in these hallways, quietly observing. She witnessed the promotions handed out to the loudest voices, not the most qualified workers. She saw the whispered deals behind closed doors, the way mistakes were buried by pinning the blame on those too powerless to defend themselves. And then there was the CEO, Enzo Greaves, a man who commanded authority and exuded arrogance in equal measure. Alan was the type of leader who ruled through fear. His voice boomed in meetings, his sharp comments cutting through the room, leaving even the boldest executives silent. To him, success was the only thing that mattered, and people were mere tools to be used. Olivia often overheard his sarcastic remarks about employees who didn't fit the company's image. "She's still here?" Alan had once sneered about one of the older secretaries. "Why haven't we retired her yet? It's not like she's adding any value." It wasn't just the comments. The company was riddled with unethical practices, all conveniently swept under the rug. Bonuses were quietly slashed for the lower-level staff, while the leadership team celebrated record-breaking profits. Olivia had heard whispers about inflated expense reports, shady client dealings, and even the quiet firing of a whistleblower who dared to speak up. The cleaning staff, including Olivia, bore the brunt of the toxic culture. They were the unseen, the unnoticed, just there to clean up the mess, both literal and figurative, while the executives played their games. She had seen her co-workers brought to tears after being scolded for leaving a speck of dust behind. She had watched their paychecks stagnate, even as their workload increased. And of course, there was the constant dismissal of their humanity, the way people avoided eye contact, spoke down to them, or treated them like they were part of the furniture. One incident still burned in Olivia's memory. A young intern had accidentally spilled coffee on the marble floor near Alan's office. The intern froze, clearly terrified, as Alan rounded the corner. "Are you kidding me?" Alan snapped, his eyes flashing with irritation. His gaze darted to Olivia, who had just walked by with her mop and bucket. "Clean this up," he barked at her, as if she were the one at fault. Olivia said nothing. She didn't need to. The intern apologized profusely, but Alan waved him off with a dismissive gesture. To him, people like Olivia and the intern were little more than background noise. These moments had piled up over the years, each one a small stone added to a growing mountain. Olivia's patience had been impressive, but even she wasn't immune to the weight of it all. She felt the sting of disrespect, the exhaustion of being invisible. But Olivia had never been the type to crumble. She let those moments fuel her resolve, storing them away like ammunition for the day she would need them. The employees around her might not have noticed her silence, but it spoke volumes. Olivia was always watching, always listening. And the more she saw, the more she realized that the company's success came at the expense of its humanity. But Olivia wasn't just taking notes, she was quietly planning. And soon, the pieces would begin to fall into place. Olivia had kept her secret closely guarded, not out of fear, but as part of a long-term strategy. She wasn't just the cleaning lady, she was the largest shareholder in Sinclair and Wells, a position she had inherited after the sudden passing of her late husband, David. David had been a quiet investor in the company's early days, accumulating shares when no one believed in its future. By the time of his death, those shares had blossomed into a controlling stake. At first, Olivia hadn't known what to do with this unexpected power. She wasn't a corporate strategist or a boardroom regular. She was just Olivia, a woman who had raised 2 kids, fought through life's challenges, and found comfort in routine. But as time passed, and she continued her quiet work within the company, she began to see the value of her position. Being invisible had given her a unique advantage. She could observe without being noticed, listen without raising suspicion, and learn everything she needed to know about the people who thought they controlled the company. The moment that pushed Olivia over the edge came during a routine evening shift. She had just finished wiping down the executive lounge when she overheard 2 senior managers laughing over drinks. They were discussing layoffs, joking about how easy it was to cut the dead weight without anyone caring. "Some of these people act like their jobs matter," one of them laughed. "They don't realize how replaceable they are." Olivia froze behind the door, her hand gripping the cleaning cloth. These weren't just numbers on a spreadsheet, these were real people. People with families, bills, and dreams. And yet, to these men, they were nothing more than expendable assets. That night, something inside Olivia shifted. She knew that it was time to act. Olivia sat at her small kitchen table, a cup of tea in hand, her notepad open before her. She wasn't sure where this would lead, but one thing was clear: she couldn't remain silent any longer. She began to write, listing the unethical practices she had witnessed, the people who had been mistreated, and the moments that had stuck with her over the years. By the time the sun began to rise, she had outlined a plan that could change everything. Her first step was to dig deeper. Olivia used her access to the building to gather information that most people wouldn't think twice about. She took mental notes on conversations, paid attention to schedules, and even discreetly glanced at documents left unattended on desks. She wasn't stealing or snooping. She was simply piecing together a picture of the company's inner workings, quietly gathering the intel she needed. The second step was to call in reinforcements. Olivia had a few trusted allies outside the company, friends who were lawyers, financial analysts, and former employees who had left on bad terms. She shared her findings with them and asked for their advice. Slowly, they helped her craft a strategy that would not only expose the toxic culture, but also secure the company's future. They would turn the tables. The final step was the hardest. Olivia knew that confronting the CEO and the board would require more than just evidence. It would demand courage, composure, and an unwavering belief in her own worth. But she was ready. Olivia practiced her speech in front of the mirror, her voice steady but firm. She knew this wasn't just about her. It was about everyone who had ever been dismissed, underestimated, or treated as less than. The shareholders' meeting was less than a week away, and Olivia was ready. She wasn't just walking into that room as a cleaning lady. She was walking in as someone who held the future of the company in her hands. But as the day drew nearer, Olivia couldn't help but feel the weight of what she was about to do. This wasn't merely a confrontation, it was a reckoning. The day of the shareholders' meeting arrived with an air of confidence radiating through the building. Executives strutted through the hallways, their chatter filled with optimism about another year of record profits. None of them noticed Olivia, pushing her cleaning cart toward the top-floor conference room. Her face remained calm and unreadable, as always. The boardroom was a stark contrast to the rest of the office. The long, polished table gleamed under soft lighting, and the floor-to-ceiling windows offered an expansive view of the Dallas skyline. Around the table sat the company's most powerful figures, including Alan Greaves at the head. His posture was commanding, his smirk exuding arrogance. Olivia entered quietly, as she always did, placing a pitcher of water on the side table. No one looked at her. To them, she was just part of the backdrop. But this time, Olivia didn't leave. "Excuse me," she said, her voice cutting through the room like a blade. Heads turned, confused and slightly annoyed. Alan barely glanced at her. "We're in the middle of something," he said dismissively. "I know," Olivia replied, her tone steady but firm. "That's why I'm here." Alan leaned back in his chair, a condescending smile spreading across his face. "Unless you're here to clean up after us, I suggest you leave." Olivia didn't flinch. Instead, she stepped forward, pulling a folder from her cart and placing it on the table. The logo of Sinclair and Wells was blazoned on the front, along with the words "Shareholders Report." The room fell silent. Alan's smirk faltered as Olivia began to speak. "For years, I've watched this company thrive on the backs of people you refuse to see," she said, her voice unwavering. "I've watched employees mistreated, ethical lines crossed, and profits prioritized over humanity. And I've stayed quiet until now." Murmurs erupted around the table. One of the board members leaned forward, squinting at the folder. "What is this?" he asked. "This," Olivia said, opening the folder, "is proof. Proof of the unethical practices, the mismanagement, and the outright disregard for the people who make this company run." Alan's voice boomed across the room. "Who do you think you are, coming in here and making accusations? You're a cleaning lady." Olivia met his glare with a calmness that shook the room. "No, Mr. Greaves," she said, her words deliberate. "I'm the majority shareholder of Sinclair and Wells, and today I'm firing you." The shock rippled through the room like a thunderclap. Alan's face turned pale, his confident demeanor crumbling as the words sank in. "You're joking," he said, his voice trembling slightly. Olivia didn't blink. "No, Mr. Greaves, I'm not," she said, her voice steady, unwavering. She turned to face the board members, her gaze sharp and direct. "I've spent years gathering evidence, and it's all here." She placed the folder squarely on the table. "The inflated expense reports, the unethical layoffs, the harassment complaints you've buried. I have the power to vote him out, and I'm using it." The room erupted into chaos. Alan tried to argue, his voice rising in desperation, but the board members quickly recognized the gravity of the situation. One by one, they turned to Olivia, asking questions, skimming through the folder, and confirming her claims. It didn't take long for the vote to take place. Olivia had done her homework, and the evidence she presented left no room for doubt. Alan Greaves was removed from his position that same afternoon, his protests falling on deaf ears as security escorted him out of the building. Olivia stood in the boardroom, her back straight, her expression calm. The executives who had once ignored her now looked at her with a mixture of awe and guilt. But Olivia wasn't looking for their approval. She had already set her sights on what came next. The news of Alan Greaves' dismissal spread through the company like wildfire. By the next morning, the entire office was buzzing with disbelief and speculation. How could the cleaning lady quiet, unassuming Olivia have been the majority shareholder all along? Whispers filled the break rooms and hallways, but this time they weren't dismissive. They were filled with respect, admiration, and even a tinge of guilt. Olivia had become a figure of quiet power, her actions leaving a mark on the company that no one would soon forget. However, Olivia didn't bask in the attention. She returned to the office the next day, not with a mop and bucket, but with a clipboard and a plan. She wasn't just there to fire a toxic CEO. She was there to change the company's future. In the weeks that followed, Olivia worked tirelessly to implement changes. She started with the people who had been overlooked for years. Raises were given to the cleaning staff and other underappreciated workers. Olivia made sure that the HR department took harassment and discrimination complaints seriously, introducing a third-party watchdog to ensure transparency. She also took on the toxic culture that had festered under Alan's leadership. The board, once complicit in Alan's actions, now found themselves held accountable. Olivia insisted on regular training programs focused on ethics, inclusion, and employee well-being. For the first time in years, employees at Sinclair and Wells felt seen, heard, and valued. But Olivia didn't stop there. She hosted town hall meetings, inviting employees from every level to share their experiences and ideas. She listened carefully, taking notes and ensuring that everyone had a voice in shaping the company's future. One afternoon, as Olivia was walking through the office, she was stopped by a young intern, the same one who had spilled coffee near Alan's office all those months ago. "Thank you," he said, his voice sincere, "for everything you've changed in this place." Olivia smiled warmly, meeting his eyes. "No, we've changed this place together." Outside the building, the Dallas skyline glittered in the late afternoon sun, a symbol of the transformation that had just begun. Olivia stood for a moment, looking up at the towering glass structure she had once entered unnoticed. It had been a long road, but she had done what many thought was impossible. This wasn't just about firing a CEO or exposing corruption. It was about showing that no matter how invisible someone might feel, they can hold the power to create meaningful change. Olivia's journey was a testament to the power of resilience, patience, and integrity, a quiet force that overcame arrogance and greed. With a deep breath, she felt a peace that had eluded her for years. As she walked away, it wasn't to fade into the shadows, but to step into a new chapter, a new beginning. In life, we often overlook the quiet strength of those who observe, endure, and wait for the right moment to act. Olivia's story is a reminder that sometimes the most unexpected individuals are the ones who spark the most profound changes. If her journey resonated with you, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Join us for more stories that show how resilience and justice can reshape the world.